Hey yo! Yesterday I joked about we had fun about Sergeant Good, him resigning, and we played his cross examination of him. Then we showed a little bit about Eurobucanic, and then we had fun at their expense. And today I was supposed to show you guys Kelly Dever when she went full moron and other things. And today, just a few hours ago, former Trooper Proctor Texts was revealed, parts of it. And they are among the most disgusting things I've ever read. Have I seen similar texts and speech like this before? Sadly, yes, I have. I grew up a very long time ago. I grew up in the same community as kids and grandkids to active Swedish Nazis. So yeah, I have heard this type of speech before. Let me show you a little bit an article from a while ago. Hold on here. We're there. This is Birger Furugård, the author of a book. This is a number of years ago. In the eyes of the German Austrian Painter Party, he was the Swedish Führer, also called a Värmland Hitler. Constant contact with primarily Himmler and Goering. Yeah, he was also called Deje Hitler. Deje is where I went to school, kindergarten and up, with this guy's grandkids. So have I heard this type of speech before that we are going to go through regarding Trooper Proctor? Yeah. That type of speech that we are going to go through with Trooper Proctor should have died in a bunker in 1945. But as revealed through Trooper Proctor, it is alive to this day. And I also want to remind you that the Proctors was Albert's second family. You don't become Michael Proctor without growing up within that type of speech. The Proctors, the McCabe's, the Alberts. Now, is there actual evidence amongst the McCabe's and Alberts regarding this? Of course not. They were very, very careful. But there's still discovery. But we also know that they are very, very good at hiding crap. So don't expect too much of it. What I'm expressing here is my opinion. By the way, it should be good for you, good for my health and everything to be very, very clear. What I'm stating are opinions based on the documentation and personal experience regarding this type of speech. Now, why am I wearing this? Second Amendment, the United States. Well, I bought this because I couldn't find the First Amendment. But I've said this before on my streams that I want to at one point in time I really want to relocate to the United States, and one of the issues is the lack of free speech over here. And I've told you this before. July last year, it became illegal to insult a government employee. What I've been saying about Trooper Proctor for the past 2.5 years, I would be in prison for here. Because at the time we started talking about this, he was a government employee, a cop. If I identified a cop by name, and believe me, I can, over here, who has said vile things, done vile things, and he or she gets offended, they can charge me for that, and I will go to prison. So regardless of how bad you think it is in the United States, you still have a First and Second Amendment. We don't. So, now, this here is Karen Reed in state court suing the Massachusetts State Police and town of Canton. This here was they were probably notified, the MSP and Canton, a few days ago before this was filed. And now we know why Sergeant Good chose this time to resign. Why he got the ever-living F out of the force in order to save himself. Reminder, he's still certified. He can technically go to a neighboring county and get a job as a cop. Let's hope they expedite everything that removes the certification from these assholes. Also, a reminder before we go through with this, Yuri Buchanan was Proctor's supervisor. Now, reminder, this is in text with a fellow police officer, what we are about to see. Do you think he was silent about this with cops he trusted, with friends? No. Everything you are about to read with me, what by all accounts was said out loud, near cops, near friends, who agreed with him. And there are some admissions in here that will make your skin crawl about exactly how evil Trooper Proctor is and how his friends agreed with his opinions. Okay, now this stream will probably get demonetized. So before we start, if you are now, I know things are rough economically. I don't expect anybody to finance this, to donate or anything. I'm perfectly happy with you watching my stuff, giving a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't yet. Perfectly happy with that. Watch some of my videos, gets me a little ad revenue. Perfectly fine. Now, if you are a person who goes to Starbucks 2 times a day for coffee, please consider one of them as a gifted membership, as a super chat, as a buy me a coffee or via PayPal. Just saying. Oh, JKD back. Thank you so much. We love you, Santa Claus. Me loves you too. Me loves you too. All right. I guess I can't put this out anymore. Hold on to your hold on to something, because this is going to get wild. Absolutely wild. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Bristol Superior Court, filed June 4th, 2026. Today. Hey, Stringy Bell. I agree with JKD. Thank you so much. Thank you. Karen Reed plaintiff versus Massachusetts State Police and Town of Canton defendants. Complaint. Introduction. By the way, I had complaints about my microphone. So if anybody else has that, please let me know. Then I've had this microphone for over 2 years now, so maybe it's time to upgrade it. Introduction. The not guilty verdict in Commonwealth v. Karen Reed on June 18th, 2025 did not merely end a wrongful prosecution. It shone an unflinching spotlight on something the MSP and the Town of Canton Police Department has spent years trying to conceal. An embedded culture of bigotry, misogyny, systemic failures, and institutional rot at the very core of both organizations. As a result of this entrenchment, Ms. Reed now files this action against MSP and CPD for their negligent hiring, training, and supervision of biased and corrupt police officers whose actions violated her constitutional rights and caused her immense harm. At the heart of Ms. Reed's claims lies a distressing narrative, one not just about individual rights, but about fundamental principles upon which our society is built. Through this action, the MSP and CPD will now be forced to answer for their police officers' unlawful conduct against Ms. Reed that is set forth in detail below, but also for the insidious culture of bigotry and misogyny that fostered such unlawful conduct and has likely resulted in other unconstitutional criminal investigations in which countless unknown others have also suffered. Microphone is short for Michael-ophone. Yeah, we need jokes in the chat today, folks. We need jokes. We need dad jokes. Indeed, the MSP and CPD have avoided facing this very moment for years, but it's now time for the long-awaited transparency and accountability owed to the citizens of this Commonwealth. Former MSP Detective Michael Proctor and former, as of 2 days ago, CPD Sergeant Sean Good are virulent bigots whose hatred for anyone and everyone different from themselves permeates their every action. They are not officers who occasionally voiced an offensive remark. They are men whose written and recorded communication, sent to one another and to a circle of like-minded friends over the course of a decade, established entrenched and unrepentant hatred for women, Black Americans, Asian Americans, Jews, Hispanics, Arabs, and gay people. Their unfitness for any position of public trust was not subtle. Yeah. Oh, we are only going to read about Good and Proctor in this filing. and a circle of like-minded friends. That's a lot of people, folks. Remember the what was it? A message board with friends, family, and other cops from high school and stuff. Yeah, that was testified in the second trial. Yeah. I'm going to store that comment and I will answer that in the end of this. It was extensively documented and set forth below knowable to MSP and CPD long before either agency assigned them to investigate and prosecute Miss Reed. Proctor's and Good's involvement at the outset of the investigation into the death of John J. O'Keefe III, invariable and irredeemable, contaminated it in every aspect. As depicted in thousands of written and audio messages that the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office has thus far hidden from public view, and far from the inclusive values that both organizations publicly claim to pursue, Proctor and Good secretly and proudly were badges of hate. Footnote 1. Multiple copies of a thumb drive containing a selection of the audio recordings referenced herein are attached as Exhibit 1. Somebody recorded it. Indeed, bigotry guided their every act as law enforcement officers for years. But such conduct remained disguised by the uniforms they wore and obscured by the support and encouragement they received inside the walls of the very institutions designed to prevent such injustice and protect the public. The District Attorney's Office. Yeah, that would be Morrissey, Lally, anybody in that DA's office who had their hands in the Karen Reed case knew, at least from 2024 going forward, what Proctor and Good was up to. Every single one who had their hands in this, which includes everybody who was involved in the second trial. They knew. They all knew. Yeah, you know, good point there about Rumble. I'm streaming this on YouTube and Rumble. So I'm going to post the Rumble link to my Rumble, the link to my Rumble stream in the chat. So if this stream goes down, I'm going to go wild on Rumble, because then I don't have to choose my words. Let's continue. For the MSP and CPD who hired, trained, supervised, and observed these two for years, Proctor's and Good's hateful and despicable views were not only part of their own daily vernacular, but were woven through the fabric of their organization's culture and everyday conversation. After telling Good about a multi-car accident in Canton, quote, "Actually, take your time. I saw an N-word was involved. So I wouldn't rush if you're working. Let them die." That's a quote. How many people are dead today because Proctor, Good, or Albert, or McCabe in the police force in Canton PD, MSP, Boston PD? How many are dead today because, oh, are there any non-whites let's take our time. This is not. This is his opinion, and he wasn't contradicted by friends, family, colleagues. Next quote. My new VP is a giant malignant C word. I pray to the heavens. You don't pray to the heavens, Proctor. You have a completely different deity as your choice. I pray to the heavens that some effed up insect from the Amazon crawls up her, hatches eggs, and the litter kills her by eating her from the inside out. How does that sentence even enter your mind? How? Quote from Sean Good, biggest C word, slut. Here is Michael Proctor referring to his then girlfriend's chocolate starfish. Quote, I can't even get effing near that thing. I make every effort possible. I'll wait till she's asleep and try to get at it. I try every effort possible. I try to get her hammered. I can't get anywhere near it. It's starting to piss me off. It's not cool. That is Trooper Michael Proctor about his now ex-girlfriend talking about graping her. His attempts to grape her. There's a lot of people really, really quiet on social media right now. But not all of them. There are still people defending Proctor and Good. Next quote. Went into Canton-Day this morning to get the transcript and saw more N-words in 10 minutes than the 4 years I spent there combined. Everywhere I looked, there was monkeys running around. Wanted to ask the woman in the guidance office, where are the white kids? Where the fuck did all these N-word for children come from? Sean Good, eat a black dick. Proctor, quote, that lady was an absolute C-word, rag, N-word who had it in for me for some reason. Some reason, Proctor, besides you being a I believe we can think of a few reasons why people don't like Michael Proctor. Sean Good, stupid, ugly, G-O-O-K. Proctor, quote, unfortunately, I know Randolph all too well. The place is a complete shithole filled with N-words, no good N-words. Sean Good, he's a you, so definitely puts out. Proctor, deport their asses. I don't care if they are here legally or what their excuse was. Fucking deport those sand N-words. Sean Good, S-C-H-I-N-K Todd. Proctor, Detroit should be the strong along with places like Flint, Michigan. What? Let's see. Flint, Michigan? What are they known for? Let's check the use. Oh, school shooting or stuff. They are breeding grounds for N-words to run wild. Sean Good, you fucker. Oh, also dirty water in Flint. Oh, yeah, Flint, Michigan. Okay. Michael Proctor, it should be punch an N-word day in Canton today out of retribution. Any shine you see, blast it in the face. Sean Good, N-word. Proctor, all GOOKS have shrubs between their legs. And from Michael Proctor, America sucks. Hitler was really onto something. Then the fucking US had to step in and ruin it. That is Michael Proctor. Being an active follower of the Austrian painter. I'm 26 minutes in. Let's see how this goes. Disgraced former Michael Proctor. Former trooper Michael Proctor is a Nazi. Not just a joke Nazi or a diaper Nazi. He's an actual Nazi. By all accounts, he believes that the Holocaust was a good thing. That's my interpretation of what I'm seeing here. And he had a badge and gun for over a decade. Every case he has been involved with should be dismissed, regardless of that case. Every single case. Because there's no way to know that he conducted himself good in that particular investigation. There's no way. You have to assume now, in my opinion, that what he did in the Karen Read investigation, he did in every investigation. Especially if there was a woman, a black person, a Jewish person, an Arab, or a gay person. We have to assume that now. We have to assume that now. Jan asks, is there more than what was in this filing? Yeah, this is just a highlight reel, so to speak. There are, by all accounts, much, much more. All right. Indeed, throughout the course of their friendship, which dates back to high school, Good and Proctor bonded over the warped prism through which they both view their surroundings and the individuals they encounter in their personal and professional lives. These distorted worldviews were shaped by unimaginable hatred and intolerance, through which they dehumanized others, often wished violence or death on them, demeaning them, or even suggesting planting evidence on them to cause them harm. In written and recorded audio conversation beginning in 2013, the year MSP hired Proctor, and when Good was already an officer with CPD, and for almost a decade later, these two law enforcement officers referred to community members who they encountered as C-words, fat C-words, real C-words, N-words, dirty N-words, child N-words, the G-word, more words, a lot of words. Proctor and Good believed these folks were polluting the neighborhoods in which they lived and worked, and where they eventually served. They did more than just subscribe to and act in conformance with their bigotry. They actually memorialized in writing and voice messages to their like-minded friends. Not a few communications, thousands of them. They discussed sharing private nude pictures of women and intentionally male splash on women while they slept. Few protected classes, community members, or public figures were spared. Good wrote, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is a, quote, little C-word. Sean Good, the governor can suck my dick. New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft is a, according to Sean Good, terrible C-word you. And then, from Sean Good, now also proving he is an active believer of the Nazis. Anne Franks is a lying C-word. I warned you. I warned you. Put simply, they were then and are now completely and unquestionably unfit to hold positions of authority with MSP and CPD, much less to play important roles, or in Miss Reed's case, the primary role in homicide investigations. And despite that CPD has received, reviewed, verified, and analyzed these same messages nearly a year ago, Sergeant Good remained employed with a full rank as a sworn police officer by the CPD until 2 days ago. On January 29th, 2022, the MSP and CPT unleashed these two misogynist bigots on Miss Reed to work on the conflicted and corrupt investigation into the death of Mr. O'Keefe. It did not take long to trigger their hatred and target Miss Reed. Indeed, Proctor, Good, other police officers, and their respective organizations understood the assignment once their fellow cops and friends, Brian and Nicole Albert, Matthew and Jennifer McCabe, and Brian Higgins, referred to as house defendants in Miss Reed's pending federal court action, falsely reported that Mr. O'Keefe never went inside the house. Even though his face was battered and bruised, he had dog bites and scratches on his arm, and he had a severe laceration on the back of his head that could only have come from a backward fall onto a ridged surface in the house rather than a flat front lawn. Law enforcement began immediately targeting and framing the female outsider, Miss Reed. Who done it as, are Proctor and his wife still together? There are some reports that Elizabeth Proctor has been seen without her wedding ring. But nothing official. As the MSP's assigned lead investigator, and without knowing any more about Miss Reed than she was an outsider and a female, Proctor openly exposed his ossified prejudice when he described her to his group chat buddies as retarded, whack job C-word, with no ass, leaks poo, whom they decided 16 hours in the investigation had zero chance of skating. She's effed, he pronounced. Proctor intended to make the investigation cut and dry, so he and his close-knit circle of friends could pin it on the girl. Immediately after Miss Reed's arrest, Good made the same type of sexualized and dehumanizing comment about Miss Reed's medical conditions and physical appearance that he and Proctor peddled in the hallways of their organizations on a daily basis. Quote, Jesus, every girl will want a brain tumor, multiple sclerosis, colitis, if you can look like that in yoga pants after ending your boyfriend. Meanwhile, as Good pondered Miss Reed in yoga pants, Proctor seized Miss Reed's phone and launched immediately into a search for naked pictures of her, only to report back to his colleagues and friends, disappointingly, no nudes so far. But as he wrote to others as the investigation began, he hoped that she kills herself. MSP and CPD's investigative approach was born out of Proctor's and Good's perverse and depraved pattern of singling out and vilifying an outsider while protecting the Blue Line and their families. This was, of course, made more palatable by dehumanizing Miss Reed. With the help of Good and CPD, Proctor and his colleagues at MSP, including his direct supervisor, Yuri Buchanan, conducted a fundamentally conflicted and corrupt investigation where the goal was to pin it on the girl, and which included rampant violations of policies, procedures, and ethical rules. For example, as described further below, despite the overwhelming evidence that Mr. O'Keefe was inside the house at 34 Fairview Road, they did not search the home for blood, fingerprints, or DNA evidence. The house was neither processed nor photographed by a forensic criminalist. Indeed, the investigators did not even walk into the crime scene house until a week later, and then only for a pro forma visit and brief interview of Nicole Albert. No effort was made to secure evidence from the Albert's German Shepherd, even though Mr. O'Keefe's body was found in the front yard with fresh and obvious dog bites and scratches on his right arm. Nor did Proctor, Buchanan, or their MSP colleagues conduct any physical examination of the house defendants or attempt to seize their phones. The investigators did not attempt to secure the crime scene, document evidence, collect biological material, videotape or record interviews, take DNA control samples, geolocate digital devices at the scene, collect electronic devices, secure surveillance footage, create a crime scene log, or maintain even the most basic chains of custody in accordance with well-established investigative protocol. Yeah, folks. Imagine the scenario of that people in the house, their phones being seized and gone through. Well, if one or more of those phones were taking 3 flights of stairs at the same time as John O'Keefe's phone did, that's evidence. That's long gone now. Because Proctor, Good, Buchanan, Lally, Fanning, all of them decided, no, we are not going to investigate a fellow police officer. Worse yet, with the help of others at both the MSP and CPD, Proctor and Buchanan manufactured evidence to ensure that Miss Reed was blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death, intentionally diverting attention away from Proctor's friends and fellow law enforcement officers. This including planting evidence at the scene, on Mr. O'Keefe's clothes, and on Miss Reed's vehicle to support the House defendant's false narrative that Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe with a vehicle, notwithstanding that investigators knew Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with the motor vehicle strike and consistent with a physical altercation and dog attack. What actual evidence is there? Well, you have, remember the shards of glass that Proctor said he found on the bumper of Miss Reed's car? That turned out to have no relation to the drinking glass or anything. That was Trooper Proctor probably looking at the road, saw shards of glass, decided to take it and presented it as evidence. We've gone through this before. Physics say, beyond any doubt, that Karen Reed's Lexus did not hit John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was not hit by the SUV. The angle of the shards in the grass alone says, no, this never happened. As I have a video on it where my amazing skills in paint show it, that if Karen Reed drove 24 miles an hour in reverse, in that angle, she would have hit the cars in the driveway. That is what that angle tells us. There are, to this day, there are people out there that ignore this. They are so invested in this. Folks, this is what separates us from them. Say, for some odd reason, at the second trial, that, ring camera, or anything that actually was evidence against Karen Read. Few of the law tubers and other people who has invested their time in this would have had any problem changing their mind. The same should apply to people believing in Karen Read's guilt. Sooner or later, you have to come to terms with you were wrong. But they won't. There's a group of people who simply will not change their mind. Now let them. These are people who I would describe as completely useless. Not just in this case, in everything. I could bet money they haven't heard the words "I love you" from their kids or their spouse in many years. Let's continue. Among other failures, MSP's and CPD's delegation of power and authority to those as biased, corrupt, and bigoted as Proctor and Good led to Ms. Reads being wrongly accused of homicide for 3.5 years and subjected to suspicion, to arrests, to prosecutions and public trials, and public condemnation. Indeed, with the exercise of ordinary care, both MSP and CPD would have known that Proctor, Good, and others were unfit for service from the beginning. Incredibly, Proctor himself acknowledged this fact in 2017 after 4 years of the job, telling his friends, quote, "No idea how I passed the background." Now, after being twice acquitted of all charges related to Mr. O'Keefe's death, Ms. Read brings this action to recover for and address MSP's and CPD's inactions, and negligence failures to ensure that justice was sought and served in the aftermath of January 29, 2022. To be clear, however, this complaint transcends Ms. Read's personal and actionable grievance. Rather, it's a clarion call for reform and accountability. Cloaked with the emblem of authority, MSP and CPD and their employees, Proctor, Good, and others betrayed their sworn commitment to uphold the law. Their prejudices undermine our very democratic principles in wielding the great force of government over those who are vulnerable and powerless. MSP's and CPD's cultures of intolerance, hidden from the public but in plain sight within these organizations, cannot stand unchallenged. MSP and CPD are culpable and must confront the consequences of their institutional negligence. Now, parties, jurisdiction, incorporated facts. Read incorporates by reference each of the facts alleged in paragraphs 28 to 108 of the amended complaint filed in Read v. Proctor et al. Civil action, blah, blah, blah. It's in federal court. It's attached as Exhibit 2. So they are incorporating the federal lawsuit into this. Additional facts. Proctor's and Good's engraved misogyny, racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and other biases. By January 29th, 2022, Proctor and Good, both inveterate bigots, had long-standing and deeply held biases against women, as well as almost every other protected class of people other than white male, non-Jewish police officers. Proctor's and Good's clear willingness and tendency to dehumanize, judge, and evaluate people and circumstances based on their hatred and biases significantly contributed to the willingness to embrace the narrative provided by the House of defendants and target Miss Reed, leading to the destruction of her career, her financial stability, and her very freedom, as well as the emotional and physical harm caused by 2 years-long prosecution and trials for a crime she did not commit. Proctor and Good's reservoir of, I don't know how to, vituperation fed by the staggering prejudices and the extent to which they are willing to pass judgment on others based solely on gender, race, religion, or sexual orientation, or apparent from each of their contribution to the cesspool of abject hatred reflected in their group chats and email chains with their friends beginning in 2013. Below is a section of these messages. Yeah, there's more. There's actually more. Messages sent by Proctor. Even during MSP's hiring process, Michael Proctor could not contain his bigoted views. February 26, 2013, Proctor wrote to his friends, "Hey, dickheads. Just want to give you two a heads up that you guys may get a call from a state trooper named Scott Cooper who is doing my background check. Don't know how far back they are going to go with this stuff, but didn't want to have this guy catch you off guard." This makes me wonder how much more is actually out there to be found. How much more? Because if he was worried in 2013 to not survive a background check, what did he do in high school up until he joined the force? How much more is out there? What did he actually do? Proctor's friend responded, "No problem, but what are we supposed to say? Last time the Boston Police Department lady was grilling me for exact dates as to when and how long you lived in Brighton, how we paid rent, to who, etc., anything specific we should be aware of." Proctor responded, "That lady was an absolute C-word, rag, N-word who had it in for Bear, referring to himself in the third person by his nickname Bear. I bet he gave himself that nickname because he looks like a circumcised dick if he closes his eyes." Talked to this guy for half an hour today, and I would be shocked if he pulled the same crap as her just from how she acted with me on the phone. Apparently, MSP did not, quote, pull the same crap as the Boston Police Department, who did not hire him during these interviews because MSP hired Proctor. Maybe somebody put in a good word for him, like an Albert or a McCabe. It hired him at the time Proctor was constantly sharing countless messages with his friends and other law enforcement officers that illustrate the extreme and aggressive prejudices and biases he held against women, people of color, the all-electors community, and others. Proctor's view even polluted his thinking about MSP's hierarchy and leadership. Quote, "If that person is black, they probably make him the next colonel of the state police." Much of Proctor's aggression and hatred, however, was directed at women. In fact, from the time of his hire at MSP through the time he began investigating Miss Reed, Proctor shared countless messages with his friends about his perspectives on women. Discussing a sexual partner, not wanting to be jizzed on. That's when you do that when she's asleep. Then tell her one way or another you will spray a rope on her. Fat twat. Giant malignant C-word. I pray to the heavens. Yeah, we already heard that. Micromanage isn't even the word for this twat bag. I want to shove a crowbar up her bum and let rats crawl in there. Seriously, guys, you are not well, Proctor. If this is what goes on in your mind with insects and rats, putting insects and rats in women, inside women, you should be institutionalized, Mr. Proctor. You should not be around people. You are dangerous. And this, we also went through how he tried to grape his then girlfriend's behind. And it keeps going and going. And going and going and going. During the same time, Proctor also prolifically met his friends about his similar hatred of Black, Asian, Hispanic, Arab, and Jewish people. This we already went through. Here's discussing a college football game. You notice that N-Word's headband from A&M said something like, "Cash me out. Would it be nice if they were still our slaves?" That's a quote from former trooper Michael Proctor that I wouldn't have to go pick up. Yeah. And it keeps going and going and going and going and going and going. Text after 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 text of just keep it just keeps going. Swamper said, "Notice these are cops raised in the North, people, not the South." Yeah. In addition to these horrific statements indicating that the extent to which he believed those with backgrounds and characteristics similar to him, white male, were superior to others, women, non-white, Proctor also wasn't shy about his other proclivities that made him patently unfit for service, including that more than once Proctor discussed planting coke on people and shoving a nightstick up someone's ass. Was that him theorizing, or was that Proctor seeking approval of things he already did? What's a nightstick? I think he is referring to the cop, the baton. With that, Proctor recognized his inadequacy in 2017, writing he had no idea how he passed the background, although he did explain that MSP detective units do the background checks for applicants. They allowed a girl into the next academy who admitted to using cocaine and ecstasy and recently used those drugs. Message sent by Good. Yeah, we already went through this, including to, wait, she's sending you nudes, send them. If Lisa would let me see her cans and actually take a photo of them, I would send them. We are family here. He also displayed the same racial and religious supremacist viewpoint as Proctor, which, like his misogyny, impacted how he viewed the members of the public he encountered on a regular basis as a police officer. Among others, Good sent these messages while he was a CPD officer, referring to Robert Kraft as a terrible C-word Jew. N-word. Can't deal with this, with the GOOKS. GOOK land. Jews control the election. She's a Jew, so she definitely puts out. The Jew chick, stupid, ugly Jew fucker, eat a black dick, eat an Asian dick. Very Jewy. Noisy little Jew dweeb. Is that a Jew or a black? And Anne Frank's is a lying C word. And this is just a selection. Remember that, folks. This is what they presented in this. Oh, are we still monetized? Let me check here. Let me check here. No. Well, I'm limited, as in limited monetization. So, which means no ad revenue. Like Proctor could exhibit more in these messages than just his bias and hate. He also showed that he lacks the basic discretion and neutrality required of a police officer deputized to protect and serve all members of the community, regardless of skin color, ethnicity, gender, religious beliefs, and/or sexual orientation. As just one example, in 2022, as an 18-year veteran of CPD, Good shared his views in writing on Sandra Birchmore. Good, Sergeant Good. A young woman who tragically died the year before in Canton and whose death was initially ruled as a self-ending until federal authorities discovered that multiple officers from neighboring towns, Stoughton's police department, had been assaying Miss Birchmore when she was a minor. After federal authorities investigated, they charged a former Stoughton police officer with her murder, and her death is now classified as a homicide at the federal level. The Norfolk County District Attorney's Office early this year changed her death from self-ending to undetermined. Against this backdrop, Good told his friends that chick was borderline retarded. Really good. Were you there as well, Sergeant Good? This is neighboring county. And we know that Sandra Birchmore was groomed from when she was a minor. She was passed around in the Stoughton Police Department. The Farwell twins, what was his name? Devine, and probably more. Town's name is pronounced Stoughton. Stoughton, okay. Yeah. This is the case where on state level they refuse. And why? Because D.A. Morrissey approves of this conduct. He approves of the Nazi cops, and he approves of the rapist cops, and he approves of the PDF cops. There's no way around it because he's been around these cops for decades. He's known these cops and investigators for decades. He knows exactly what they are up to, what they are doing. And the reason they don't get charged for their crimes is because D.A. Morrissey, in my opinion, approves of it all. Good also helped his friends avoid repercussions for what appears to have been their regular practice of driving drunk. Quote, sobriety checkpoint on 138 by the trailer side tonight. Please stay away tonight. Can't help you if you get caught. Too many troopers and Milton PD. Keep this info between us. He apparently relished his ability to use his institutional power and authority and access to illegally obtain information about women he encountered in his daily life, writing in 2015, Haha, quote, haha, I can't wait to look this C word up tonight at work. MSP and CPD knew or should have known about Proctor's and Good's bigotry. Proctor's and Good's biases, bigotry, and personal histories were known or should have been known to MSP and CPD when they were hired, trained, promoted, and supervised them. Not only were their MSP and CPD unnoticed of Proctor's and Good's troubling views and intolerant attitude towards various members of the community, they were sworn to protect and serve during the underlying investigation into Mr. O'Keefe's death. But Proctor's supervisors knew Proctor had a close relationship with the Alberts, and that Proctor made no secret of his bias against Miss Reed, demonstrating a clear prejudice against her from the outset. For its part, CPD refuses to acknowledge its role in this debacle of an investigation and recognize the significant flaws in its hiring, training, and supervising practices, illustrated by Good's continued role as a sergeant for the CPD until 2 days ago, when, upon information and belief, CPD was informed by MSP's counsel that this complaint would soon be filed. Helpful right to the end, CPD then permitted Good to resign 2 days before the filing of this complaint rather than firing him, and thus saving him from the reputational and financial implications of being terminated for cause. Yeah. The thin blue line is there. Here's the thing. When the CPD allowed Good to resign, they're not saying they disapprove of his conduct. They are only saying, sorry, you got caught. That's all they are saying. Oh, and thank you to Anima Rampier over at Rumble. $2 Rumble rant. I'm gotta make sure Mr. Jingle gets his tweet since ComicTube has restricted the monetization of this video. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As for the MSP, both before and during the Proctor-led investigations, his immediate supervisor, Buchanan, provided his annual employment reviews, true to form, despite knowing firsthand the extent of Proctor's unlawful conduct, bias, and bigotry. Buchanan repeatedly and falsely wrote that Proctor has handled himself with the utmost professionalism and with strict integrity. And he swore to this under oath on the stand. Knowing, because Yuri Buchanan was in the chat groups, which we just read some of it. Here's my understanding. Not only did Yuri Buchanan know this, I would suggest to you that, in my opinion, Yuri Buchanan agrees with Proctor's world views. And confirmed that I have successfully discussed MSP's policies concerning anti-harassment, sexual harassment, and discrimination, and diversity, among others. Other times, the MSP simply looked the other way. For example, in February 2024, 4 months before Ms. Reed's first trial, the MSP was aware they had a problem specifically related to Ms. Reed's case. The Department of Justice had begun investigating the investigators, and on February 1st, questioned Proctor in a grand jury proceeding about text messages he wrote in which he called Ms. Reed a C-word, among other bigoted comments the Department of Justice had found. Proctor was also questioned about his text at 11 p.m. on January 29th, that House Defendant Brian Albert would escape scrutiny in the investigation because he's a Boston cop too. Further, Proctor was confronted at this grand jury about text from Julie Albert to his sister, Courtney Proctor, asking to give Proctor a gift for some implied favor he did for the Alberts during their interviews for the case. Yeah, we know about that. On February 4th, 2024, Proctor had a meeting and told the highest level of leadership at the MSP, Colonel John E. Maughan, recently retired. Lieutenant Brian Connors, recently retired. And Major Leonard Coppenrath, active. So 2 out of 3 chose to retire in the past year and a half. The more information we got to know about Trooper Proctor, the more people resign who was around him. Isn't that weird? He told about his testimony to the Department of Justice, including his text messages. They did not terminate him, did not immediately ask for his phone, and did not immediately investigate his bigotry. They knew it existed and where to find it, but they didn't want to, at least until Miss Reed's trial was over. Indeed, they tried to hide it from Miss Reed and the public, despite initiating an internal affairs investigation in early March 2024, before the jury Miss Reed's first criminal trial was even impaneled. It was not until Miss Reed's defense counsel found out about these messages and then used them during the public trial that MSP concluded it couldn't ignore this any longer. MSP proceeded to falsely claim that it only became aware of the messages during the defense cross-examination and finally terminated Proctor. While Internal Affairs, MSP's Office of Professional Integrity and Accountability, OPIA, launched a probe led by Detective Lieutenant Kevin Dwyer to investigate Proctor's lewd text messages regarding Ms. Reed. The MSP inexplicably assigned 2 non-OPIA troopers, Major Benson and Captain Berrios, to perform cursory and brief interviews of the Proctors and Alberts, inquiring about their personal relationships with one another. The Proctors and Alberts were not confronted with any texts or social media posts depicting the decades-long family-like bond. No outside witnesses were interviewed, no cell phones were seized, no evidence was presented. It was not just reasonably foreseeable, but nearly certain that MSP's and the CPD's failure to use ordinary care in selecting to whom they would impart power would result in members of the public being targeted and severely impacted by officers and troopers' elemental shortcomings. Put differently, the biased and corrupt investigation that harmed Ms. Reed was the natural consequence of MSP and CPD hiring and promoting biased and corrupt law enforcement officers. In line with their barely concealed willingness to dehumanize and condemn people, coupled with their readiness to ignore or overlook objective evidence, Proctor and Good began the investigation against a female outsider with bias and prejudice fueled by their bigotry. After Proctor and Good launched a biased and corrupt investigation, other police officers followed suit and caused harm to Ms. Reed. After the start of the investigation, others in MSP and CPD also contributed to the unlawful investigation that stripped Ms. Reed of her constitutional rights. MSP and CPD are liable for the negligent hiring, training, and supervision of these other officers whose wrongful acts also contributed to the harm suffered by Ms. Reed. What does this tell us, folks? There's more. This is just the beginning, folks. In my opinion, the defense are showing a bit of their hand here. They have information on more than Good and Proctor. They are rattling the rat's nest. They are telling, but not showing, that they have more. Giving some of these other officers a chance to, yeah, I need to come clean here. Because there's more here. I'm convinced of it. Let's continue. Specifically as described in the amended complaint in the federal court, action against Proctor, Buchanan, Tolley, and the House defendants that are specifically incorporated herein, MSP's and CPD's employees' wrongful acts include, but not limited to, they were propelled by the House defendants' false statements. They failed to investigate any theory other than seeking singularly focus on Miss Reed to the exclusion of all other available evidence. They ignored that Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a physical altercation and dog attack, and that no injuries were consistent with a vehicle strike. They intentionally sidestepped or wholly ignored fundamental investigatory procedures. They disregarded and failed to obtain pertinent interviews and other critical evidence from the House defendants that cannot now be recovered or recreated. Through Proctor, they secretly communicated with the Alberts on Proctor's personal phone, deliberately back-channeling those communications to circumvent his state-issued device and used Proctor's sister as a surrogate. They manufactured evidence to ensure that Miss Reed, not their friends and fellow law enforcement officers, was blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death, including planting evidence at the scene, on Mr. O'Keefe's clothes, and on Miss Reed's vehicle to support the false narrative that Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle, even though they knew Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with a motor vehicle strike and consistent with a physical altercation and dog attack. And they expressly encouraged flagrant abuses of power. Armed with the fruits of his fundamentally flawed and biased investigation, the Norfolk District Attorney's Office proceeded to prosecute Miss Reed for murder, resulting in 2 juries rejecting the Commonwealth's charges and Miss Reed losing her career, home, car, livelihood, and reputation. As Greg Connor, a 25-year veteran prosecutor in that office, who is now seeking the role of district attorney, recently said of the Commonwealth's murder charge, quote, "The reach exceeded the grasp," and, quote, "I don't think there was another DA office in Massachusetts that wanted to prosecute Karen Reed," end quote. Here's the thing, Greg Connor, who is now trying to be the next DA in Norfolk County, you knew all of this. You were seen in the trial taking notes. You knew all of this, and you kept silent. Now you're being DA Morrissey's little pup, little marionette. Because you know if Adam Deitch wins, there's going to be heads rolling. And maybe even Greg Connors. And then there are the counts they allege. We already, there's nothing new there. Town of Canton, nothing new there. Civil conspiracy, well, jury demand prayer for relief by her attorneys Alan Jackson and Aaron D. Rosenberg. And there's this audio files found on attached USB drives. So this is just the envelope. And Exhibit 2 is the federal complaint. Folks, this is so much worse, these texts and audio recordings of them. And this is not the end of it. This is a selected few out of, 38,000 documents on his phone that was found on the Proctor's iCloud. There's more, I'm sure of it. There might be even worse, I'm sure of it. And it will be involving more people than we know. Now, I saw this, which I starred a while ago, from Eicherman. Nick, at the end of this, can answer, do you think it will last through qualified immunity? Well, Good has resigned. He doesn't have immunity. Proctor he was fired. He doesn't have immunity. They can ask for immunity regarding the conduct while they were police officers. I don't think it will hold, because it was not only within the department, it was outside of the department as well. When it comes to Morrissey, he's old, he's fat, he is about to resign. My guess is, unless there's something absolutely spot on him saying he knows it's bullshit, but will do it anyway because the Albert suck my cock every night, they will just allow him to retire into nothinghood, and he will pass away from a heart attack before 2030. That is my guess. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Will something happen to Judge Bev? No. No, it won't. Regardless of how we think about Judge Bev, there are much worse judges out there. The Delphi case. If you go to any channel who covered almost any channel who covered the Delphi case, the wrongful conviction of Richard Allen, every one of us will tell you, we wish we had Judge Bev in that case. Because despite everything, she at least allowed cameras in the courtroom. Judge Gull, the judge in the Delphi case, hired Rick's attorneys. The Indiana Supreme Court reinstated them and told Judge Bev, hey, you're going too far. And she ignored. Yeah, she allowed them to be his defense attorneys, but she denied him a defense. She denied him third-party culprit defense. She denied him an expert talking about toolmark. She denied him an expert talking about the crime scene. She denied him the testimony of an FBI agent who was... they asked for that FBI agent to testify remotely because one of the state witnesses who had been lying about his whereabouts up until he took the stand shocked the defense by saying, yeah, I drove my van at that place at that time for the first time in 7 years. And Judge Gull denied them, calling the FBI agent who interviewed Brad Weber, who was the state witness, who interviewed him, where Brad Weber said he was nowhere near the crime scene in 2017. And I'm just skimming the surface of that case. Folks, I can't say I enjoyed reading this. I'm waiting, like I guess most of you are, if not all of you are, I'm waiting to see the result of this. Because Proctor being fired, yeah, but he is still certified. He can just change his last name, move to bumfuck Indiana, and become a cop again. Same with Sergeant Good. he is still certified. He can also just change his last name, move 200 miles within Massachusetts, and become a cop again. There needs to be accountability. A lot of them. And this is just the beginning. We are still in there's more out there to be found. Because Sergeant Good and Trooper Proctor did not operate in a vacuum. Their friends, their families, their colleagues, I would almost bet that there are worse among them than Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Good. That is what I had for you today. Karen Reed versus Massachusetts State Police and Town of Canton. It's on, folks. It's on. And thank you again to Anima Rampier over at Rumble. Thank you so much for your $2 Rumble rant. Thank you to JK Debug for your $2 super chat. Stringable, thank you also. Thank you so much. Folks, if I could ask a favor, it is watch my other stuff, because this stream is not can't be monetized. Well, it is deemed, what do you call it? Limited, which means it will be limited in ads, it will be limited in exposure. So please watch my other stuff, especially the Delphi case. All right, folks, from me and Mr. Gingles, who is over there somewhere, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do this. Allowing me to rant, read, joke, and snark with you guys. Tomorrow, it's Slightly Bust Friday show. I guess the subject will be this, but with alcohol and snark and all of it. And for you who know, I'll be going to the United States in September. I'm going to watch the oral arguments of Rick Allen's appeal on September 21st. So tomorrow, I hope you can bring your wallets and help help me with some of the cost, because it's air travel, it's hotel, it's car, food, gas, and stuff, and it's fucking expensive. All right, folks, that is for tomorrow. You all have a great, continued great day. And remember, folks, hug your families. Unless they are shit, then screw them and give your love to the people who deserve it. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Dr. Turtle Boy walks the line, truth in his hands. Fingers point at shadows, he's breaking their plans. Corrupt suits in the courthouse playing their game, but the lies they sling won't tarnish his name. They try to bury him, but he won't go down, fighting for justice in every crooked town. Dr. Turtle Boy standing tall in the fight, truth's his weapon shining through the night. Bogus charges flying, but they can't stick. He's cutting through the darkness. Sharp and quick, the gavel pounds, but his voice won't break. No matter how much they take and fake, they try to bury him, but he won't go down. Fighting for justice in every crooked town. Dr. Turtle Boy standing tall in the fight. Truth's his weapon shining through the night. To the edge, but he holds his ground. In the face of their lies, his courage resounds. For every false word, there's a light he ignites. A warrior for truth under courthouse lights. He's been bruised, but he won't lose the war. Kicking down the gates of corruption's door. Dr. Turtle Boy still chasing the sun. The fight's far from over, but he's never done.